Hello, my name is Debbie, owlandgatorstitcher. Welcome to Flosstube number 29. Today is Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. This is a video mainly about cross stitch, sometimes about what I'm reading and watching and life thrown in. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope that you like what you see and you'll click on that subscribe button and come back again. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back, for sharing this cross stitch journey with me, and for all the comments that you leave. It's so much fun to have all this interaction with all of you. Before I jump into the stitching though, I do want to acknowledge what is going on in the world right now. As some of you may know, I was a Russian major in college and have a master's degree in Russian area studies, and I've had the opportunity to live in several countries in the former Soviet Union. I never had a chance to live in Ukraine, but I have visited Kiev several times. The first time in 1990 when it was still part of the Soviet Union, and most recently in 2014, a few months after there were some uprisings against the Russian-backed government, and there was a loss of life from protesters who just weren't going to tolerate that. And I was, in 2014, so moved by the bravery and the determination of the Ukrainians, and I'm still moved by that today, watching what is going on. The situation is quite dire there right now, and I hope that we will have a quick, peaceful resolution and that the Ukrainians will be able to control their own country again and their own fate. And I know that there are Flosstubers who are in Ukraine right now, and to them and to all the Ukrainians, I wish you to be safe. And it's hard for me to put into words the situation and how I feel right now, but I just want everyone to be safe and to know that we are thinking about you and that you have not been forgotten. So with that, I am going to move on to cross stitch and happier news. I do have a story about my life and my possessed stove. That's kind of what's been consuming my non-cross stitching life over the past couple of weeks, but I will put that at the end because I know many of you do not want to hear that story. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the stitching. I participate in a lot of Facebook games in cross stitch in order to help me direct what my stitching will be, and sometimes just give me a motivation to put in a few extra stitches. So sometimes I'll reference some of the games as I go along. If you ever have any questions about those games, feel free to leave me a question below. I know many of you either participate in the games or you watch so much Flosstube that you already know what those games are. So the first piece that I'm going to show you, and I'm not sure I've shown this to you before. I started this at the very end of 2021. So it's a piece that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. This is Anzak by Dog Samplers. And I am doing this as a monochromatic piece. I am using a sulky thread. Bend down to pick this up. So I am just using a piece of white evenweave. I think it's a 32 count, and I'm doing one strand of sulky over 2 threads. So you can see what I've done there. Not a huge amount. So I know that on this, when I was working on this, I basically sort of came up here, did all this back stitching here, and then started moving down there. I just love watching all the critters come in as they are. Some of the first ones, it was very clear. I mean, I knew that that we had these little koalas here. That was pretty obvious looking at the pattern, but just sort of watching them as they come to life while I'm stitching them it's just been a lot of fun. And honestly, I don't even remember what this one is now, but when I was looking at the pattern, I was like, whoa, that's coming in. So this is a quick, easy stitch for me, simply because, as all of you know, it's monochromatic, and that does go much faster. So I've been enjoying working on that. The next piece, also, this is the last piece I started in 2021. And I've shown this before. This is Water Goddess by Joan Elliott Designs. And in the magazine monthly challenge, they had like a 500 stitches in. It was, it wasn't an especially thread. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you could use chronic or beads or just do something, those things that we all love that put bling on our projects, but they don't necessarily, they slow us down our stitching, and so sometimes we avoid them. So I put in 500 stitches on that, on this. So I started in the bottom left-hand corner, and which is here. It's kind of hard to see the stitches because they are designed to blend into the fabric. So I put in 500 stitches of chronic. So I had done a little bit down here already, but basically all of this coming across. Leaving aside the issues of threading the needle with the cryneck and having to use shorter lengths than I'm used to, it went relatively quickly because once I started, it was just a line all the way across, and as long as, my concern, as long as it meets up with like the lily pad here and then where I'd done the stitches on her dress, that was my main concern, simply because you know, if I had short a stitch here or something, it's not going to affect the pattern at all if I'm missing a stitch or something there, because it's just meant to be background. This is a stamped fabric, so you can see it's white on that side, and it's, I think, I can't remember if the colorway is called Pond. It is a Fabric Flair, and it's a 32 count, and so I am doing, with the exception of the Kreinik, it is 2/2 using the called 4 threads. Next piece is one that I call it my when a color is called, do this one. It is an old magazine piece, and it is called Winter Wonderland. This is from Cross Stitch and Country Crafts, from the issue from the 1990s. And the reason why I was joking about that was I had several challenges that said, hey, use certain colors, and I was able to use this. So the first one was use DMC 3750, which is this sort of darkish blue color. And so I was just able to put in a couple hundred stitches of that, which this takes me very close to the edge of the pattern. It sort of has a sort of octagonal. Is that the right word? I think it's octagonal, but it's not like a stop sign. So, you know, it's much, the corners are cut out. But anyhow, so this does sort of take me over to the top, although it will, when I go, continue on down like that and then there. And then the other color that I wanted to do actually for 2 challenges was 221. So this is one of the ice skaters here, and then I think these might be like hats of other ice skaters. I have to go back and look exactly. And I did that because in Magical Stitches, they have the random DMC challenge, and I needed to do 221. And so this pattern had it, so I was able to do it. And then I needed, and then also for semi-sane stitchers, I am participating in the bingo. And so because I need to double dip, I picked 221, and I was very fortunate. It was called the first day, and it was this week that I wanted to do the 221. So I did my 100 stitches required for the DMC challenge, which covered the 50 stitches I needed for because it was my same bingo board, so it was only 50 stitches I needed of that color. And then I needed to, for another challenge, to up it to 200, so I just picked another color that was nearby and did that as well. This is a piece that, unless another color comes out or some other good reason to pick it up, it will probably go away for a while. Obviously, it's a winter theme. It's already gorgeous weather here in Florida, so the motivation to stitch on a winter piece is not very high unless I need something, either one of the images or a color that is called in there. Next piece that I have is from it's from another old magazine, and it's called Autumn Blessings. And again, I've showed this before. I'm only doing the sort of top part here. And this was for the monthly magazine challenge. I think we had to stitch on something with food. And so this has apples in it. And so here's where I am now. So I had previously done this whole center medallion and some of the stuff over here, but I came over here and started working on, these are actually apples. They obviously will need their back stitching to make them pop out more. And the same with this thing. This is actually a stump of a tree, which I kept stitching on it going, I have no idea what that is. And then this is part of a squirrel as well. So that's what I managed to do for this and my goal. And this is another Fabric Flair 18 count Aida. You can see by the back. I love this color. I got this, I won this in a giveaway from Laura on Stitching by the Shore over a year ago. I don't know the name of the color, but I really have enjoyed stitching on that fabric. Next piece I'm going to show you is Magic Steady, Heaven and Earth Designs. This is the rainbow version. So this is the version that is not the limited edition. The one, a lot of people are working on the limited edition one, which is much more purple. I have the rainbow version. So this, I just did a bunch of blues. Again, this was another start at the end of 2021. And so I think I had done about to here. So I just sort of pulling the blues in here and going here. And I keep calling this a moth, but I actually think it's a dragon, a little baby dragon flying around. So basically that's going to be red whenever I get to fill it in. So I was filling in some of the blues that goes around that negative space for now. I'm just pulling them down and basically color completing a color as, I'm sure that some of these colors pop up over here. I'm not going to count that far over, but just as they come up and I get to a good stopping point for that. So this is my largest project. And that comes in at about 444,000 stitches. So it's going to be in my life for a long time. So it's a good thing I'm still enjoying it. I am doing 1/1, 25 count full cross on this. And so this is just a 25 count lugana in the colorway Ivory. Next piece, which I put a lot of stitches in, is a Year at Hawk Hollow by Carriage House Samplings. So I am working down. So last time in my video, I showed you I had finished the July box and I started on the October block. And I did quite a bit of work on this. It was just one of those, I pulled it out. I find doing letters, as long as I remember where I am, they go very quickly. When I picked this back up, I think I had worked on it for a while and put it down for a week and then picked it back up, and I thought I was in the middle of the E, and then I realized things weren't lining up, and then I realized it was because I had misspelled trouble and I had left out the L, because I had done I think I'd done like 3 stitches on it and left like my thread ended or something, and it was just a good stopping point, and for some reason I thought that was the E, but I do know how to spell. So once I realized my counting error and actually bothered to read the whole word, I realized that it should be trouble and not trouble. Trouble. I can't even say that without the L. So I fixed that. I put in the bats, and obviously this is the witch in her cauldron, and then this is, because it was the color I was using, is the branch on what the owl will sit on that. Next one that I worked on, and I did get quite a few stitches on this. This is from the Stitching Book Club, Sapphire Mountain Handcrafts. This is the Narnia Stitch Along. I do have the second part, the way that she has done it, because she emails you each part. She has a limitation on how many she can send each day before Gmail won't allow her to do it anymore. And that was, so because I was one of the first purchasers, I'm in the first wave, but she's releasing the full, like everyone should have it by Saturday, the second part. And so then, and then we can show it. She sort of asked us not to show any, we can stitch on it, but don't show the pattern or the stitching until Saturday, if you've already started that part. Fortunately, I have not gotten that far. I am still in part 1, so I can show you what I've done. I think last time I had just done like 100 stitches of purple for a challenge. And so basically what I had done almost everything in part 1. What I was missing one of the colors, because it's DMC, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have every DMC color, and of course I don't. I, back in the 90s, had kitted up everything that was available at that point, which I think was somewhere up in the 3700s. And when I stopped doing that, then I would buy the 3800s as I needed them, and I keep forgetting that that means there might be some that are missing, never mind some of the new ones, the 1 through 35, I believe. And so I was missing one of them. I probably could have taken, just done a substitution. It's a light blue. I've got 775 and plenty of other light blues, but I decided I was going to hop into Joann's anyhow, so I just picked it up and said I'll wait. It's basically the bottom stripe here and then a little bit in each of these stars. So that's what I have left in part 1, as well as all the back stitching. Really not back stitching, more like here there is some branches here, and then it does say the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I was planning not to do those anyhow until a little bit later, because I wasn't sure moving the Q-snap how that was going to affect it. I think I am going to bump this up to an 11 by 11 Q-snap, simply because it's barely fits. This is a 32 count even weave, and it barely, this is about 8 inches across, but coming and butting against this, it gets really hard. So if I move up to the bigger one, I can obviously go further down and not worry about whenever I get to that point that I have to snap on the Q-snap over doing it some over back stitches. I don't mind doing that over back stitches that are adjacent to cross stitches, but when they are on their own, I find that they're a little bit looser in the fabric and they can get a little bit more distorted if you put something over them. So probably will do that, and that will allow me to get more space and probably get the whole pattern in, to be honest, without having to worry about the Q-snap. So that is the Chronicles of Narnia. And then I don't always do this, but when I remember, I try and stitch on WIPs on their birthdays. And so this is Evening Romance by Artecy, and it turned 2 years old a couple days ago. So I pulled this out to work on it. This is a paper pattern, so it's one that's just a little bit more slow going than some of my other patterns. So here's where I am now. So basically I think I'm on page 4. So I just put in a few hundred stitches on page 4, mostly this color here, this sort of orangey brown, I don't know what to call it, browny orange, sort of whatever. I think it was either 402 or 407, and then started pulling in some of this yellow as well up here. So it's, I love watching it to come together and just seeing the difference between here, where sort of how they've used the darker colors, and then you can sort of see the sunlight coming through in the sunset. I do love the way this is looking. Again, it's just that because it's a paper pattern and it's basically all confetti, it does take quite a bit of time for me to do it. So I don't pull it out as often as I do some of my other ones, but when I do, I enjoy working on it. And then moving on to my WIP Go pieces. So I managed to hit both my goals, which are my 2 pieces for February, which were 1,000 stitches on each. So this is Midnight Vigil from Heaven and Earth Designs, and this is the mini. And here's where I am now. So basically what I finished off the 3799. So it came here and then pulled out another gray and was working on it. And I think, as I mentioned before, I know I did a lot of the gray in here because that is a reflection of the cat's eye. And so this is part of the cat's face around his eye. And again, this is sort of the way there will be a candle here. And this is the sort of the candlelight coming off the side of his face. So love working on this. Again, I love the way that this curtain has come out, including the sash. Obviously, when I was stitching on it, it never looks that good until you get all the stitches in and step back, and you're like, wow, that looks amazing. So I'm sure the rest of this will come in as well for that. And this is about the halfway point across. And then my second WIP Go piece was Artecy the Green Dancer, based on artwork by Edgar Degas. And so I just finished what I needed to do there. So again, just pulled in more of these sort of tealy greens and just sort of working my way down through the tutu. Again, a lot of confetti, but it's an absolutely beautiful design, and I love working on this. And then for my 3 focus pieces, which really, I can fit them into a challenge, great, but if not, I just still work on them anyhow. So first one is Artecy High Intensity. This is the cropped version, and this was, I purchased it this way, so they cropped it for me. Anyone can buy it cropped, they didn't do it for me. So here's where I am now. So again, I continued to pull in a lot of the colors in the background and worked a little bit more on the back of the Jaguar. So was it like, this has been in there for a while. I don't know, maybe just because I started pulling down a little bit more in here. This is actually the ear on his head. So his face will be down here, so I'm really excited about that, and just working on it, and I love how this is coming out. Again, I love the way the leaves look here, and you can see this is some sort of, because he is standing on a log, so this is like a tree branch. Right now this doesn't look like much, but I'm really hopeful that when I get all the remaining stitches in, it will come in really nicely as well. But even if the background is a little bit blurry, which is the way it is sort of in the photo, the way that the Jaguar is coming in, I find it to be absolutely stunning, and I love working on this one. I do have a goal of finishing this whole piece this year. I sort of did my calculation, and I'm not sure, unless I really drop some of my other focus pieces, I'm not sure that I will be able to get this done, because right now I need about 2,700 stitches per month, and I have other pieces that I am working on as well that I need to, one other piece where I want to get at least 3,000 stitches in a month. And sometimes that just means this one takes a little bit of a backseat. But nonetheless, again, I love the way, and just see the top of his head there, acting like it's all cute. Reality, if I met a Jaguar in person in the wild, I'd probably be running the other direction because they've got big teeth. Another one, this is my oldest project, and I call it a focus piece, but it's really just, if I have time, it's the piece I work on first thing in the morning, and a lot of times I don't have that time. So this is Old World Map by Artecy, and I didn't even bother to show this in my last video simply because I hadn't done that much, but when I was able to look at the comparison photo from where I was at the end of January until now, I thought, okay, I've done quite a bit, so I'll show it. And I know it's hard to see, but basically I'm continuing to work on, this is the top, that like the North Pole, so that will be like the North Pole in the center there. So this is that sort of smaller map on top, and I basically, it's all 3/865, so that's why it's kind of hard to see, but I was able to turn a corner here. I keep double checking because for me it looks like it's a little bit squished, but that could just, you know, be sort of an optical illusion because first of all, I haven't come all the way around, and then secondly, like, you can sort of see, like, well, on this one over here, you can definitely see the dark frame on the map, and I got a little bit of it coming in here. And so I did pick some of the more prominent colors in this for my semi-sane bingo. So each time one of those numbers is called, I have to, it's on my semi-sane board, which means I have to put in 200 stitches. So I'm looking forward to having an excuse to pull this out and, you know, sort of, I don't want to say the word force, but because this is something I say I work on it every morning, and then I find some reason not to work on it every morning because either life is happening or I'm, you know, a number gets called in bingo and I want to put colors in that, and by the time I do that, I want to work on something else. So sometimes this gets a little bit shortchanged, and it's not because I don't like it, it's just that it's sort of, if I'm going to put in like 50 stitches on something and I've already put it in something else, then I don't want to pull out another project and just put 50 stitches in it. But that's Artecy Old World Map. And then my main focus piece this year is Cats in the Toy Box by Heaven and Earth Designs, artwork by Lesley Anne Ivory. I'm getting confused with Lisa Parker, who also does a lot of cats. And here's where I am on this. So I'm continuing to fill in, and I didn't work on this probably for the last week of January because, sorry, February. I'm getting confused what month we're in, because I really wanted to, I put in some time into high intensity and other things, but I pulled this out last night and worked on it and bit the bullet and I've got quite a bit of Kreinik, and so I like pulled it in and did some Kreinik on this calico kitty here, and started a little bit on this ginger kitty over here, and then I'm just sort of pulling colors in. So I know I've done some work on the beads since the last time, and these colors are also up here in this doll, and so just sort of pulling colors as they're coming and then color completing across the area of the pattern that I am working on. So this is an 11 by 11 Q snap, so you know, it's at least 2 pages across and maybe not quite 2 pages down, but the area that I'm working on. So that is all the stitching that I have to show you. Let me jump into my plans. It is a new month, which means we have 2 more WIP Go calls. So the first WIP Go call was, for me, it came out to be Little Cake Shop, artwork by Aimee Stewart, charted by Heaven and Earth Designs. This is the max color version, so I know I've shown this before, but here's where I am on that one. So my goal is to put in 1,000 stitches, and I really, I can say this every time I show it to you, I would love it if I finished this poster. Again, this is because it's max color. There are a lot of different colors in these teacups, and it's slow going. And so I do work on it for a while, and then I get bored of, you know, doing 5 stitches, you know, having to pull out a different color, do 5 more stitches, and so then I get bored and I pull out one of the pinks. But in this area, I'm running out of, you know, this is pretty close to the Q snap over here, so I'm running out of other colors I can do. Obviously, I can do colors in the ceiling as well. That will pull me over. But for now, I'm hoping, you know, again, let me say, I'm saying it here, I'm going to get those teacups done this month. And let's see if I hold myself accountable if I say it on Flosstube. My I feel like I'm missing one of my WIP go. I will probably remember what it is in a moment and come back to it. But my second piece that I'm going to show you, which is not WIP go, but it's for the magazine monthly challenge. This is the roller cross stitch, and this is, sorry, clear off. This is called Christmas Cat. So this little cutie hanging out there. And here's where I am on that. So it's sort of amusing to me that the last time we had bingo, this was my one of my bingo pieces, and so that's why it's sort of all dotted around on the wreath with the different shades of green and the red. And then these are two different colors of blue, different colors of the cat. I mean, I think I know I've done work on it since then, but this was a lot of 738 here. And so, and now this is my magazine monthly challenge focus. I think the theme is animals, and this kitty, so it came up the same month that they have bingo. And so I'm using it again for bingo. So I will get some good progress on this one as well. And then my other, it's on the bottom of the pile, which is why I couldn't see it. My other WIP go piece is Oak Drive by Mystic Stitch. So this is a big one. It is, well, I'm going to put my glasses on to read it because I love Mystic Stitch, but they have very small writing on everything. It is 350 by 528. So not a small project. This was one when I started it. I think I started in WIP go in 2020, not WIP, sorry, Mania in 2020. And I started it, as you can see, I started it doing it blocking the diagonals with parking, and came to the conclusion parking isn't for me. And the reason why is that I find parking and going in the diagonal slows my stitching down immensely. It actually, theoretically, on this piece makes a lot of sense because it is so confetti heavy. I mean, the dark parts of the tree tends to be more block stitching, but just to get this effect with all of the leaves and all of that, you can see the just number of threads, and I've actually pulled in some of those threads, and it's just so much. But just the way that I am able to stitch, I would like to actually get this finished in my lifetime, and if I did it through the parking method and the diagonal stitching, it would not get done. So I have made a decision, and so every time I pull this out, I pull in a few more of these threads. When I started, it was all the way down the diagonal with the parked threads, and now I'm down to the last few squares where I have the parked threads. So again, my goal, saying it on Flosstube, because maybe I'll make it true this time, is to work in all of the, my goal is 1,000 stitches on WIP go, but also before I put this away, to get all those parked threads in there with the bobbin. Sorry if that's bothering anyone. Just done. It's not for me. I think, I didn't find that the quality of my stitching improved through doing diagonal stitching and parking. Some people, they say that makes their stitches look much better, and if that works for them, great. It didn't improve my stitching. I would say for me, my biggest concern always was making sure I don't get the lines on the page. And once I started doing individual X's on my full coverage and not, going one leg across and one leg back, was the answer. Feathering didn't solve the problem either for me. But doing the individual X's, just the way that it pulled the fabric and the way that I stitch, is what solved that problem for me. So I will continue really to do cross country, not extreme cross country, because as you can see, this is not gritted fabric, and I will, for challenges from time to time, count over, but I know that's a risk, because yes, I can count, but do I count carefully all the time? No. And usually when I'm off by counting, a lot of times it's not because my counting has been off, but the place where I have started is off. I've looked at the wrong stitch and done that. So anyhow, back to other things that I plan to focus on for this month. So this is Swan Lake from Owl Forest Embroidery. So I am doing letters of the month as well. So you create a list at the beginning of the year, and this year we're doing the alphabet backwards. So this is S and T this month for me. So S for Swan Lake. And so here's where I am now. This is the kit. So you can see I've done the center dancers and 2 of the swans, although I still need to do the water under the swan. So I will focus on finishing the flowers, this flower motif, and then whatever else I need to do to hit my goal on this. So love the variegated threads in this. Love the pattern. It's beautiful. And then also for letters of the month, this is an oldie but goodie, the tea table, vintage as I like to call it. And so I am working on this, and my plan is to focus on working on that big teapot. I know I had some counting errors somewhere in here, and so I just said, focus on the teapot, get the teapot done, and then that's so, you know, it's such a central part of it. That, you know, once that is done, it will be much easier to get everything else in the proper place, or to fudge it as necessary. I'm sorry for the glare. What I find interesting is that this is looks much more pink in the photo. It's much more lilac here. I prefer the lilac, in fact, so I'm very glad about that. So enjoying working on this. Again, this was, I think, a mania start in 2020. I don't have any targets or goals for it, but I do enjoy pulling it out. I do have a lot of vintage cross-stitch designs from the 1990s, and I think what happened was I bought, you know, as I saw them, I purchased them, and then in the late 90s, early 2000s, I discovered the world of full coverage, and a lot of those non-full coverage designs sort of sat for a while because I pulled out of full coverage, and I was doing monogamous stitching, and it would take me you know, years to finish one of those, because I was working at the time. I was working, you know, full-time plus, and so just you know, my stitching time was limited. Now that I'm retired, my stitching time is much more plentiful. So that is all of these my plans. I do have quite a bit of haul. So like a lot of people, we all think, what's going on in Ukraine? What can we do to help people? There are a lot of great organizations that you can donate to, but also as stitchers, we want to make it a little bit more personal. So I made a decision to purchase a few patterns from Stitchy Princess Black. I think her name is Katerina Spaniella, and I've seen a lot of her stuff around for a while, but hadn't pulled the trigger before. And I'm going to apologize for my printer because it's a little bit tired right now. That's all I'm going to say. The ink levels are fine, but it's a little tired. So this one is called Fairy Tale Motifs. So here we go. And again, it's more vibrant than it's coming out here with the colors. But what I particularly like about this one is this girl here with the long braid. That is very traditional. A lot of Russian fairy tales, and also for I guess they now have converted it back to Christmas, but during the Soviet times, when New Year's was the really big sort of winter holiday, the way that we would sort of celebrate Christmas without the religious aspect, they had the story of their Santa Claus was Dad Moroz, Uncle Frost, or Grandfather Frost, and they and then his, instead of elves, he had Snegurочка, like the snow maiden, for lack of a better word, and she often had this long braid as well. So this image has always stuck with me. I've just absolutely loved it, and so I was happy to get a pattern with that. And then the second one, again, as well, colors are not coming up nearly as vibrant as they really are. Magical Swamp, and I just loved the way that the different motifs on this as well. I know there are different sals for, I think there's a Stitchy Princess Black sal, and I don't remember the hashtag for it. I will not be participating in the sal simply because I am doing no new starts, and I've already used my one freebie. I will earn others, but not right now. So I will not participate in that right now, but again, I've been looking at these patterns for a long time and loved them, and this was an excuse for me to pull the trigger now. I also, I think like a lot of people, loved the Heaven and Earth Design freebie that Michelle made available in the Facebook group. So I downloaded that. Here it is. It's called Deep Blue Sea. And again, my printer is tired. And so as vibrant as like this blue is and some of the colors here, they're actually even more vibrant. So will I stitch this? I don't know, but she only makes her freebies available for a short window of time. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to get that. I also got my fabric in February for Color and Cotton. And this is the last month I am doing, I can't remember what, I was doing like a mixed group. I don't think that's what she called it, but they have the more neutrals and then the more colorful. And I asked to switch to the colorful only. I was doing the mixed group. And she said, not a problem, but they'd already dyed the fabric and was it okay if I got my neutral fabric for February? I'm like, that's totally fine. And it's a lovely color. It's called Fox Run. And it's sort of this cool brown color, so it's a lovely color. But for my fabric of the month, Color and Cotton is the only club I am left in. And if I'm going to be getting surprise fabric every month, I think the colors are the way to go. I have pretty good access to. Again, I have one of my local needlework stores right in my town is very focused on samplers, and she has, especially of linen, an amazing selection of all the various colors that you might want to use for your samplers. And so I feel like I have a good access to that. And while I do prefer to do a stitch on evenweave over linen, she does have an evenweave selection, although it's not quite as good. I still feel that I can get what I need there. But for her, because she's focused more on reproduction samplers, her colorful fabrics are not that great. And I can go to what I call my next closest LNS, NC LNS, which is about 45 minutes to an hour away. And I do go down there quite a bit. And she has bolts of fabric and will cut anything to your size. And she has a lot of colors. I think getting the more colorful fabrics lets my imagination run a little bit more. Otherwise, I'm going to be like, hey, let's do a different shade of blue. And blues are amazing. But I think getting, a yellow or a peach or a pink or, something else, well, it inspires me if I already have in my collection to say, okay, how can I use this? And I love the results. But otherwise, I'm like, oh, I can do this on a different shade of blue. Which, I love blue. That's not a problem. But sometimes we need to be, open our minds up to opportunities. But anyhow, the LNS in my town, okay, I do say that she focuses on samplers, and she certainly has an amazing collection. And she had ordered some Cryonics for me that I needed, so when I went to go pick them up, I, of course, again, it's a 10-minute drive, and it's basically right next to my local library that I go to all the time. So, it's like I can pop in whatever I want, but I picked this up. This is, so it's not a sampler, but I picked up, this is the Jackrabbit. This is number 3 in, is it number 3? Yeah, it's number 3. It's March, but number 1 of the spring, whatever. This is the Jackrabbit anyhow. And I know Mama Loves You GB, Michelle, has already started this one. Tons of people are doing the fox. He looks amazing. And the swans look great as well. I haven't seen as many of those stitched up. And again, I think Michelle is the only one I've seen that has started the Jackrabbit. I am planning to buy all of these as I find them. I am not subscribed anywhere. I know there are several subscriptions, but I did not jump in on that. But anyhow, I don't, it'll be great once I see all of them to decide how I want to stitch them. I probably will do as she recommends by the seasons, but I have time. That's a problem for another day, or not even a problem, but that's a decision for another day. I also, as I mentioned, I've been slowly collecting the Cottage Garden Songbird series as I find them. And so I went down, and you'll see this a little bit later, but I went down to my NC LNS because she called it a garage sale where she let people come in, and they would rent a table, and they could basically sell their stash. But this was not from the stash. These are 2 I bought. So this one is Hope, and this one is Bliss. So again, not really sure when I'm going to start these or how I'm going to do them, but I've just seen so many of these stitched up, and I really, really love the way they look. And so someday I would like to add all of these to my collection, stitched, not just sitting on a shelf. But then on to what I picked up from the garage sale. There were, so many amazing things, and I let's just say I'm glad it was cash only, because otherwise my credit card would have taken quite a dent. Some things were very reasonably priced, and other things were not. So this is one I purchased that this is from, I don't speak Italian, but I think it's like Passione Ricano. I'm going to put my glasses on to see if I can even attempt to understand what it actually says. It says Italian style encounter cross stitch design, and then it's called Romantic Time, I think. So I think there's something under the sticker here. Romantic Time is the name of it, and then Mediterranean. So that's this. I've never heard of this designer before. She had quite a few of these, but I decided just to pick up one. It is used, and I don't know if it has actually been used for stitch, but like there was a sticker on it, and that had been opened, and it has been sort of looked at. So, and it's, like many of these, one of these big, just keep opening them up. So, nice one to add to my collection, as I have slowly gone down the rabbit hole of, that one I'll say, pretty people. And then there were also some people who were selling kits at very nice prices. So I bought this one. This is a gold collection petite called Beacon at Daybreak. So just a little pretty one there. And then this is one called, this is a gold collection dimensions kit. And this is Leonardo, and isn't he a handsome looking fellow with his little paint back there? It is the kit with all of the thread. It was opened. The fabric is not in here. The person probably pilfered it, but given what I paid for it, I am totally cool with that. If I have, provide my own fabric for this pattern, because I don't mind using kit fabric, but it's not always the best. So having to use my own fabric is totally cool. And then the last one that I was really excited about, I had not seen this one before, but I was, there were quite a few people there who were selling miras and stuff like that. A lot of them were patterns that are still available, and I have no problem, buying them from people who purchased them and then decided not to do them. But, I can get that anywhere. And given it was cash only, I wanted to save my cash for, in fact, I did end up having to go to the bank, but I took out what I needed and not more. And I got this one. This is called Christmas in London. And I'd never seen this one before. And it's from 2014, so it's not that old. But I think what enticed me was the woman had gone and she had purchased all of the beads and all the treasures for it. So this was sort of self-kitted up, if that's the way to put it. So, she didn't buy a bead pack. She had collected all of it, and I think she just realized she was never going to stitch it. And she knocked the price down considerably for me. Because what I ended up paying for it was significantly less than if I had gone to the open market and bought this and all the beads. And so I was really happy to find that. It's a mira I've never seen anyone working on, so I was very excited to find that. And that sort of leads me a little bit into sort of Flosstubers I've been watching. So I know a lot of people have been talking about her, and so I jumped on over and watched her myself. But I watched, I'm going to get this wrong now, Needleberry Stitcher. It's definitely Needleberry. I can't remember what the second part is. I will have her linked in the description box below. But she, and she has a huge, she has collected a lot of cross stitch. She's been stitching. She's probably my age, maybe a little bit younger, but has been stitching, I think, since she was a little kid. And she has been a collector. And so I believe that she has every single mira that has been published. And some of them she's been buying as they come out, and then some of them she had, she's gone and hunted on eBay. But I believe that she now has everything except for the most recent release. And she did a pattern parade of all of her miras. So she has started a few, but the pattern parade is just that. And she actually had to break it into 2 videos. So I think it's 179, 180 patterns that she has. And she does go through and talk about, she sort of reads quickly the back and says, this requires Krynic or Karen water lilies or millhead beads or treasures or whatever. And it's just nice to go through. And she did have this one that was, and maybe other people have shown this, but I just wasn't aware of it. But it was, great to sort of see it there. She described it as busy, and I would probably describe it that way too, but me, I'm like, the busier, the more, the better, the bigger, the better. So that doesn't bother me, but I know some people like the more simplistic looking, not simplistic, but the ones where the focus is really on the figure and less on the background. But I was very, this one, again, I keep showing it because I love it. She's there, but she is taking up less than half of what you're stitching. I mean, you've got the tree on the table here and then all the background here, and she's just sort of fading into the background there. And I think that's part of what I like it as well, is that it's more than just a pretty woman, but it's a scene. So that's one person. Another person that I wanted to mention as well for the Under 1000 Subs Club is Tanya, the Starlit Stitcher. She has a lot of a good variety of projects, and it's really great watching her and just sort of watching her talk about the evolution and her decision making. And I think the thing that also also amazes me as well is she and her family are waiting for their house to be built. So they're living in a camper until their house is ready, and they're in very limited space as a result. And I think she's married with 2 kids, so very small space, and yet she does some amazing stitching, and she's got a nice background, at least for the video. Maybe it comes down after the video, but she's got lots of flosses hanging and everything else, and so I just love watching her stitching, and she seems like a very nice, genuine person. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and oops, I forgot to tell you my story about my possessed stove, so I'm going to jump into that now before I say goodbye. For those of you who are still here, I hope you'll find this story amusing. I can look back and laugh at it now, but let me tell you, when I was going through it, I was not laughing. So my husband and I purchased the house we're in a couple of years ago. But it was, I think, built in 2006. And the previous owners were the original owners, and they took good care of the house. But because the house isn't that old, there are sometimes things that just don't work as well as, you don't realize the problem until you have a problem. That really didn't make sense, but anyhow. So we've slowly, as appliances have started not to function properly, we've been slowly replacing them, and things have come up. And it's clear that the construction they did things to code, but they didn't do much above code. And so anyhow, so our range, which was a gas stove top and an electric oven. I love to cook, love having a gas stove, but there were little things that I wasn't thrilled about. Just that, and I know the people who they love to entertain, so I'm sure they got a lot of use out of this range as well. But just things like the hinges on the oven, you couldn't, you had to stand to the side because the door would just come out and clunk you on the toe if you weren't careful, because the hinges just weren't, they weren't providing a little bit of resistance anymore. And it was a double oven, and the top oven, basically, it didn't have good insulation. And so I very rarely used it, because if I used that oven, basically it rendered the stove part unusable, because it just made the surface so hot that even if I never had any of the burners on, you couldn't touch any part of the stove. And the heat that came off of it, and I'm in Florida, so great in the winter if you get more heat, but in the summertime, I do not need to be adding more heat to this house. So just little things like that. And we've been talking about replacing it, and then the knobs started breaking. And again, individually, none of these were issues that sort of motivated us to get it replaced. But in totality, we had even been talking about it. In fact, my husband and I had gone to Home Depot for something else, and I started looking at the ranges there, and we were, but again, when you're talking about, buying a range, it's a lot of money, and, gas and electric and all the things that I wanted. So I just, we hadn't pulled the trigger on it. Well, we we have a cleaning crew that comes in every few weeks, and she was cleaning, one of the people was cleaning the top of it, and she sort of came and said, there's a problem with your stove, and the, it's a gas stove, but the ignition, the spark is, the igniter is electric. And basically, I think she had gotten a little bit of water into it, and it shorted, and it just kept sparking. And then eventually it stopped. But she did let me know about that. And I said, okay, we're talking about replacing it. Well, I sort of left, and apparently she kept cleaning the stove. And then a couple of them started sparking. Like, clearly there was some sort of short in the system. And, she wasn't doing, anything wrong. It was just, you clean, a little bit of water gets down, that happens. But clearly there was some sort of corrosion or something, and the water was getting where it shouldn't be. But then that time the things would not stop sparking. Like, we turned on the gas to think, okay, maybe we can get some of the water to evaporate, and it wouldn't happen. And basically the only way that we could get it off, I just went to the fuse box and flipped the switch on the range. And of course that made it stop sparking. But at that point my husband and I were like, okay, we're not going to have this thing sparking all the time. So we went and we purchased a new one. Like, thought the next day, okay, all the water is gone, flipped the fuse box, thing still was sparking. At that point we're like, it's possessed. Like, this is not normal. For it to stop working would be normal, but for it not to be, like, just for the spark to keep happening, didn't seem normal. So we then, so we ordered it, and basically, we obviously made sure that it would, fit the space and all of that kind of stuff. And I did want a double oven, and wanted it to be convection. I wanted at least the burners to be gas, and whatever. So they come delivered earlier this week, and the guy comes and he pulls it out, and he goes, yeah, we're not going to be able to install this. And we're like, why? And he goes, well, he's like, you have a gas line coming in. He's like, but there's no valve on the gas line. And we're like, well, we can shut the gas off outside. That's not a problem. And he said their insurance won't allow them to, they're like, you can shut off the gas from the outside, but like, the cutoff has to be a certain distance, and if you do it from the outside, that distance is too long. Don't blame the installers. I get that, he was very concerned about the insurance, and I understand. If something were to happen and it's gas, it can be quite dangerous. So they pushed everything back in and plugged it back in. Or I don't think they bothered to plug it back in because we had it off in the fuse box, but they sort of said, we'll drop off your current range, but you need to get a specialist in to fix this. So we called a gas and plumbing company, and the guy came out, and he sort of said, yeah, this is weird. And we looked at it. He said, yeah, they had no problem installing it. And he said, but the issue is that they probably didn't bother to install the valve here because your counters aren't that deep. And so when you put the stove in, you're not with the valve, you're not going to be able to push it all the way back. So anyhow, so then the guy who installed the valve, who was great, came, and he actually then installed the new range for us, which was sort of sitting basically to the side of our kitchen, for lack of a better word. The cat thought it was a great place to sleep. She thought, we're like, it's lumpy, it's uncomfortable, it's metal and styrofoam and plastic, and yet she thought it was a great bed. It was something new for her. So anyhow, so he pushed that in, and so it's probably a good 6 inches away into the kitchen space. Not a huge deal. It doesn't have that great sleek look, but you know what? The rest of our kitchen isn't that sleek looking either. So it works. We were very nervous at first because he went and tested all the burners, and then the clicking was starting again. And we're like, oh my God, it's still possessed. Turned out he just had turned it on to light and hadn't put it up to, after it's lit, then you just put it on to like whatever number you want to have your gas flame coming up. So it all works. It actually, have my convection oven. Haven't done a huge amount on it. This only happened yesterday. And they are supposed to come back over the weekend and take the old one away, which, of course now it's like all sticky and nasty. The cat does not think that's a good place to sleep, which we're very happy about because we don't really want the crud all over her. And we also really don't like the idea of a cat sleeping on the stove for obvious reasons. So anyhow, that's the story about my possessed stove. And again, I can look back and laugh. But the company that we are paying, that we paid to install the original one and to haul it away, said, oh, can you just put it outside and we'll come pick it up when it's convenient? And my husband and I are like, no, we're paying you to carry this thing out. And it does need a dolly and stuff. We could drag it across the kitchen, but we have a fake hardwood floor, for lack of a better term, and if we did it across that would scratch the floor. And I'm not worried about the tile. The tile is durable, so I'm like, no, you need to come into the house and pick it up and do what we paid you to do. So anyhow, that was my long story about my possessed stove. So that's what passes for excitement in our household. But I hope that all of you are enjoying your stitching. If you've stuck around this long, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in a couple weeks. Happy stitching.